I work with a large nonprofit here in town. We work with people who are homeless, and I was a graduate of the social work program here a long time ago. So I started working with this organization 18 plus years ago, and we started engaging in research and evidence-based practices about 17 years ago. When I left this program, I did not think about research. Although I loved research, it did not, it was either clinical or admin. But research was really not part of it. And I was really fortunate to, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking that I was working in an organization with a postdoc when I graduated, and she got involved in MHA, which was a community national organization. She was on a committee, she invited me to participate, and it was very data focused. And they sent me back to my inpatient psych hospital to collect data, and I couldn't find any. And then I had known somebody for a long time. Some of you may know him, Carlo Di Clemente. And on several occasions he suggested to me that I might really look at working in a research setting. And I was so surprised. I thought, this guy's crazy. Why is he thinking this? And then I was looking for a new job, and lo and behold, there was a job at UTMB working in research and psychiatry. And so I thought, okay, I'll try it. And I learned so much. My background was administration. I worked many corporate jobs. And so my mindset is very much Harvard Business Review and outcomes and that kind of stuff. Although I didn't really start learning that and applying it until I started working at Search. I think one of the things that's really helped me is, in fact, the Fed's really pushing. You need to learn about outcomes. You need to learn about logic models. You need to learn about performance improvement. And not just pushing it, but demanding that you do that. When I read that quote at the beginning that Bowen showed, the thing that stood out for me was this woman wanted to improve their numbers. And because that's what we've been doing in our organization. All of our staff go through outcomes training, and if they don't get it the first time, they go through a second time or third time. They all enter their own data. We have focused so much on data and data quality. Our staff, our line staff, run reports. If there's inconsistencies, they're the ones that have to go back and fix it. And you know, it sounds all sort of dry and boring, but what we've done is really develop our capacity to have good quality data so that if we're doing evidence-based practices or whatever we're doing, we have good numbers that can show it. And we put a data quality plan in, a data monitoring plan in, and our numbers over the last year and a half on core data elements, this is so dry, but they've improved from 74% to 92% across the agency. And so now we're really ready to start our formal quality improvement process, continuous quality improvement, of which evidence-based practices is a big part of that, but not the only part. But it's really, whatever evidence-based practices we use, we need to be able to have good quality data to show the outcomes. And I'll be talking to more tomorrow about the EVPs that we're using. But the other thing is we have been involved in tons of research, and we've been involved in over 15 studies and evaluations in the last 17 years. Some have been very big, a nice NIDA study, 2 HUD-funded national surveys. So we're really in the thick of it with it, and yeah, it's good.
Thank you, Kat.
So I'm Joe Yaffe, and I assume you can all hear me. And from the beginning of my interest in social work, I've always been interested in how practitioners use information to make decisions and how we could improve that decision-making process. On the other hand, In my doctoral program, I had to take a class on human service organizations, and I cried and whined my whole way through. So why I'm speaking on this panel, it's a little beyond me. But I've been reading this paper on which we'll base the presentation for a few weeks now, and I've given it a lot of thought, and I have nothing really original to say. Much comes from what I've learned from mentors, from colleagues over the years, and much of it's already been said today. I'm not going to say anything about adaptation legends, but I sort of wish I could because I think it's so cool. But I'm not going to say anything about that. So what is my thinking? Where did my thinking converge with the topic that Bowen presented? And I think that we both come from a perspective of wanting to serve clients more effectively, to be able to solve human problems more effectively. And we think that knowledge needs to be built based on input, both from workers and from the people who receive the services. So I think building it from the ground up is really important. We wonder what will support practitioners who care enough to think critically and to keep thinking critically. And we think that interventions that work in one setting may not automatically work in another setting. So where we differ maybe is just because we come from such different perspectives. A big thing here is the definition of evidence-based practice. And Bruce already mentioned this today, so I'm not going to belabor it again, but I sort of adhere and am influenced by Sackett's model, wherein evidence-based practice is a confluence of the best evidence available, clinical expertise, and the client's preferences, wishes, values, and circumstances, and that all of that comes together. Therefore, there is not one intervention that works. Interventions work in some situations, and they don't work in other situations. And so we need to think differently. And so evidence-based practice is not just built on RCTs. A lot of it is built on systematic reviews. Systematic reviews have received very little mention here today. And I'm sort of surprised by that because my life is consumed by them. I know that you can't take information from a systematic review and say, this will apply to everybody, because practice simply doesn't work that way. There are too many individual differences. So we need different kinds of research. And we need different kinds of research for different kinds of questions. And I think it would be very useful to be able to think about what different kinds of research we need. We need research about theory, why something works, what can make something different, what are the circumstances under which that will work better, and circumstances under which it won't work at all. We need to think about efficacy questions. That's the RCT stuff. Effectiveness questions. That's field research. Acceptability studies. How well does it work and under what kinds of circumstances? I think we need to be using an engineering model for looking at how to adapt interventions to individual kinds of circumstances. And usability testing is one way of doing that. And this is very much like something that came out of social work many years ago called developmental research and utilization from Rothman and Thomas. So each of these different kinds of research bring different kinds of objectives, methods, products, criteria for evaluating evidence, rigor, and generalizability. Everything's different, and if we don't go to the bottom of thinking about what do we need to think about for this particular question at this particular time, all research, it's not going to help us. So I think all researchers should be research-minded. Okay? Every researcher, every social work practitioner, by their code of ethics, need to be thinking about how to incorporate research. They need thinking. They need to be thinking about common conditions, asking relevant questions, finding out what are the known knowns, what are the known unknowns, both of those could come from systematic reviews, and what are the unknown unknowns. If you're not thinking about questions, you're not going to be able to answer them. So social workers are trainable. We can actually train them to think this way, but it has to be consistently applied, and they need to be encouraged, and they need to be talking to each other. Some forms of research are incompatible with practice. What? Am I done?
You got 1 minute.
Oh, thank you. Okay. All you need to say was 1 more minute. Okay. So there are some forms of research that you can't do while you're serving people. They're simply incompatible. Our code of ethics wouldn't allow us to do formal experimentation. So control group research is very difficult to apply. But what we do need is to be thinking about program theory, looking at moderators, what are the facilitating and inhibiting conditions, how it applies, how we understand that. We need general adaptation guidance. So for example, where do you need to strict fidelity and where can you be flexible in the fidelity? The CDC has done a pretty nice job on this, and I'd like to see that more generally applied. We also need to be thinking about implementation monitoring and ways to respond to information. And I can think of 4 different kinds of circumstances. Program gaps, where we think we know what we're doing and all of a sudden we realize we haven't invented anything about this particular problem that we're faced with right now. Undesirable outcomes. Hey, we tried this, it worked down the street, we just applied it and it bombed. It made everybody worse. Inadequate guidelines. Well, they say this is how you do it, but when you really look at it, I can't follow those instructions. And 4, contraindications. You simply know, somebody else has already mentioned this today, you simply know this is not going to work here. We've got to do something different.